Hello, boys and girls. We're going to look at how to monitor your client's intensity. So we have 4 different ways in which we can do that. We can use observation. We can use what we call a talk test. We use RPE, which means rate of perceived exertion, or we can monitor the client's heart rate. So let's look at, first of all, observation. So we're looking at our clients. So we can look at our client's form, whether they're engaging their core to improve what we call neutral spine position. And we can keep our client in that neutral spine position to avoid any injuries to the client. We can talk to the client, so we can ask questions, and depending on their responses and how they deliver the responses, can give us an idea of whether they're working easy or whether they're working hard. So for example, if you ask me to describe how I got to the gym today, as the client, I would say, well, I left work, I got in my car, I drove down the road, I parked the car, I got into the gym, I changed, I then came in to meet you. I can say all of that information in a short space of time. Therefore, you would suggest that I'm not working quite hard at all. On the other end of that, I could say, well, I left work, and then I got in my car, and then I drove down the road, and then I came to the gym, and then I got into the changing, and then I met you. So those gaps in between me talking would suggest I'm working much harder. So I can use the talk test. I can use RPE, the rate of perceived exertion. So we've got 2 different RPE scales. I can use what we call the Borg scale, which is numbers between 6 and 20. And that roughly equates to 60 beats per minute all the way up to 200 beats per minute. So if I ask my client on the Borg scale, well, give me a number between 6 and 20, and they tell me 10, I know they're working slightly harder than they are at rest. If they say to me, I'm working 17, then I would expect them to be working close to their maximum. All the way down to what we call the CR10. So this is a simpler version of the Borg scale. It's using number 1, we're working very easy, all the way to number 10, our clients are working very hard. So in essence, this is monitoring the intensity. Heart rate we'll talk about in a little second, because we've got 2 different ways. We can either use 220 minus your age, or we can use what we call the Karvonen method. Remember, we can look at the maximum heart rate of your client. So MHR, meaning maximum heart rate. We can do this 2 ways. We can use the age predicted maximum heart rate, which is a simple mathematics equation of 220 minus your client's age. So for example here, we've used a client with the age of 40 years old. So it's simply 220 minus 40 equals 180 beats per minute. So that's easy. Now, if I wanted to work out my client's 60 and 80% of their maximum heart rate, I simply do 180 multiplied by 0.6 for 60%, and I get 108 beats per minute. And I can do 80%, which is 180 multiplied by 0.8, which is equal to 144 beats per minute. Now, can we see the problem with using the age predicted maximum heart rate? If my client, for example, is 50 years old, then the 60% will drop and the 80% will drop. So this could be then down into the high 80s for beats per minute for my client being 10 years older. And if my client had a resting heart rate, which I'm using here, an example of 72 beats per minute, so the client going from 72 beats per minute going to 60% of their maximum heart rate won't be that much. So their intensity would be a lot lower than what I would like them to train at. So what we can use is we can use the Carvonen method. This will take into consideration the maximum heart rate using the 220 minus the age. It will bring into play the resting heart rate. So for here, I'm using the example of 72 beats per minute. Then I can work out my percentages. So the equation would be the maximum heart rate minus the resting heart rate. So 180 minus 72 will give me a number of 108 beats per minute. I then need to work out, either I want to work at 60 and 80% of the 108. Then at the end, I add on 72 beats per minute, which is the resting heart rate. So here is 108 multiplied by 0.6, 60%, plus 72, which gives me 60% maximum heart rate for the 40-year-old client as 137 beats per minute. So you can see now the difference between 137 at 60% and 108 beats per minute at 60%, which is a big difference. So it's a little bit more accurate and specific to that client. 80%, 108 multiplied by 0.8 plus the 72 beats per minute equaling 158. So the 80% from the Carvonen and the 80% at the age predicted is 14 beats. So it's a big difference for your client, which is going to make your life as coach a little bit easier to predict. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to find out more tips on your level 2 gym instructor or your level 3 personal trainer qualification, or if you're just interested for your own training.